Hello, stampers and fellow paper crafters. It's Cindy Lynn with My Inky Fingers. Thank you so much for joining me today on my YouTube channel and blog. Today is the April 2020 Paper Pumpkin Alternative. And when I pulled this out of the box and I saw this stamp, I instantly saw a skirt. And I saw a pile of leaves. Now, I don't have an image I can layer to make a skirt, but there's a cool idea for you. Now, what I wanted to do, I pulled out this stencil, and this card was a hot mess from the beginning. It turned out not so bad, but I wanted to create a scene. I pulled out the balmy blue so that I could stencil in some clouds. I do have the Daffodil Delight. That's going to be the background for our leaves, and I've pulled out the light and dark of the Daffodil Delight, Calypso Coral, and Pumpkin Pie. I did pull out the Cajun Craze, but the Cajun Craze was just way too dark, so I had to switch that out. Then I got confused and reiterated this later. So what I started off by doing was creating some masks, and this is just a big, huge roll of masking paper that I got off Amazon. I use it for my Cricut, but I just put it on some paper and I'm able to peel it off, so it's just a very cheap way for me to create masks. So I'm going to cut out these leaves very, very, very fussy. I want to make sure that I'm cutting out each and every little leaf and kind of going a little bit into it. And you'll see it kind of looks like a pokey little porcupine when I'm all done, because we're going to be layering, right? So here's the trick to doing this. What you have to picture is which part of the mirror, and I'm going to use the Gangsall mirror from the Celebration set, but you have to picture which part of the mirror is going to pop out from the leaves. So that part you want to cut off because you want your ink to show up on your paper for that part. So I'm going to do a little bit of mirror surgery here, and I'm just going to kind of place them behind the little pile of leaves and see how much of him I want popping out. So I'm going to move the tops, which are what's going to pop out, away, and then I'm going to keep the bottom parts. And I'm going to keep this really slow, and I'm going to go through it in a lot of detail for you guys with my Stamparatus so you can really see what I do. Now, I did pull out the Daffodil Delight, and I stamped it off one time. I felt that the first generation of ink was too dark, so I wanted to use the second generation. Now I'm going to cover that with my stencil, and I'm going to stamp it off one time there when I ink it, and just stamp it one more time on each side of that middle pile of leaves. So that's why I created that part of the stencil. And then, of course, when we stamp our mirrors, we're going to need that stencil again. So I'm just going to play around a little bit here and see which mirror I want where. And I was feeling like this is going really good. This was going really good up until this point. So I was pretty excited about where this card was going to go. And as I already said, I wanted to create a background, kind of like a scene, right? You know, with the clouds and da-da-da-da. And I even considered using one of the stamps from last month's Paper Pumpkin, and I'll show you that. But it ended up being a hot mess. So here I'm going to pull out my Stamparatus, and I have the bottom part of the leaves there and the bottom part of the mask because I wanted to kind of get some placement. But because I'm using that grid paper I printed, I can print on the grid paper first and then pick it all up and really line up where I want that mirror to go. And then I can take the grid paper away, and as you can see, I can stamp it there, right? So I'm going to rinse and repeat this 2 more times. I'm going to move that leaves stencil, or I guess it's not really a stencil. Do I keep calling it a stencil? Probably mask. You know, sometimes I watch my videos back and I hear some of the things I say, like after it's already been published, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a hot mess sometimes. Anyway, so I'm going to get the leaves mask and the bottom part of this mirror because I want to kind of see where I'm placing him. And I'm going to stamp it on that acetate. Now, the acetate I did have to laminate because my ink from my printer wouldn't stick to it. I guess it just wanted to wipe off, so I laminated it. But there you can see and I actually didn't even pull the acetate up because I got really, really good placement the first time I put them down. So I'm going to do this a third time. I'm going to place that mask of leaves there, and I'm just going to tuck that little mirror in the back. And you didn't have to pull the masking and everything off for him because he's just for placement, right? So when you cut those guys out, make sure you leave enough room around them so that you don't accidentally cut it too small and then get some ink on your card, because it would suck to have to start over once you get this far. So I've got that one all done. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to pick it all up, sorry. And I'm going to just line it up and make sure that I've got good placement there. Put it all back down, and then I just hold that with my thumb so that my paper doesn't move, and then I put both my magnets on it. And these transfer masks and whatnot, I keep them in my stamp cases because you can use them over and over and over. So this is where I'm going to use the Light and Dark Daffodil Delight, the Light and Dark Pumpkin Pie, and the Light and Dark Calypso Coral. I think I said I didn't use the Calypso Coral there in the beginning. I pulled out originally the Cajun Craze, and as you can see, that stuff was crazy dark. So I was like, no, I do not want to use that. So I pulled out the pumpkin pie instead. And then I used the light pumpkin pie to just kind of lighten it up a little bit. And it's way dark, but you know what? When the card was done, I figured you weren't going to see it. So all I did with each of the markers is the light one, I colored in the entire leaf. And then with the dark, I just created a little bit of shading. And then I went back with the light to kind of blend it, right? And I just wanted to stagger the colors. I wanted to kind of represent some fall leaves. We still have snow on the ground here, and it's not very warm. So when I look outside, it looks like fall. So maybe that's why I felt like doing a fall card. But I mean, come on, this is such a cute little card with all these little mirrors popping out of there. So I went and picked up my Calypso Coral, Pumpkin Pie, and Mango Stampin' Write markers because I was feeling like the leaves needed to kind of have a little bit more dimension and to be closed in. So I just traced around the outside, making sure I left a little point and then putting a little vein in the middle of each leaf. And then I did pull out my Daffodil Delight ink pad with a foam sponge dauber to just kind of give those leaves some background. So I didn't leave all the coloring in because what's the point? You guys get it, right? Now that was the stamp set I was going to use, that little house. I thought I could create a background, but I just wasn't feeling it. So I thought I'm just going to create a background here with the third largest stitched rectangle die. And then I'm going to emboss it. And I had originally embossed it with the swirls and curls, but I just felt it was too busy. So I ended up just using the subtle embossing folder. So I am going to heat emboss my sentiments. So I pulled out my Emboss Buddy to de-staticify my cardstock. And I'm going to use the Versamark sticky ink, and I'm going to ink that down on the early espresso paper. And I'm going to use some white Stampin' Emboss powder. And because we de-statified, hopefully all of our embossed powder will only stick to the Versamark. I did have a little bit of extra hitchhikers there, so I ended up pulling out my paintbrush. But I did turn my heat gun on before I put my embossing powder on. So as you can see, zippity-doo, that heat embossed really, really quick. Now I'm going to fussy cut out my sentiment. I love doing this when there's those loopy letters that kind of stick out around what you would have if you cut out a rectangle, you know what I mean? So I like cutting out those loopy letters. I think it just adds a little bit more visual interest. So I just did it with my scissors, my snips. You can do it with a paper trimmer and not do what I did. It's entirely up to you. So now I'm just going to kind of play a little bit with my placement. I ended up on this card going back and using some of the crumb cake and kind of layering the background of the leaves, and it kind of gave it a dirty look. You can't really see it in the picture, thank God, but I didn't really like it. So you could skip that step. I pulled out the free sequins from the Metallic Baker's Twine set from the Celebration. I thought that these colors, the oranges and yellows, went really, really nicely with those leaves. I knew I wanted to use the bird just to kind of bring in a little bit more color. Now here's where my big disaster happened. You notice I cut out all the leaves. I neglected to mention it, saved it for this part, because I did all these clouds and tried to create a background, and it was so funky. You couldn't tell where the leaves ended and the clouds began, and I was just like, I suck at making scenes, guys. I suck at scenes cards. So I cut it all out and threw it to the side and thought I'll probably use one of the clouds there. Now I had a little bit of a mess with my embossing. So one of the letters bled into the other one. So I just scratched it off there with my take your pick and then fixed it with my jelly pen. But nevertheless, I wasn't liking the background. So I just cut out one of those clouds. I'll save that piece of paper in my scraps drawer so that I have clouds for later if I need them for anything. But I'm really liking that layout. So I'm going to adhere down that Daffodil Delight piece that I cut out with my stitched rectangle third largest die, and I embossed that with the subtle embossing folder, right? So I'm gonna put some glue here on the tree, and I'm just gonna, kind of lay everything out pretty much the way that you guys saw it there. I want that tree to kind of line up with that yellow background. I think that kind of looked nice. And then I'm just going to stick a mirror on the insert. Now the insert is a 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And I was not shy with those dimensionals that I stuck on the back of those little meerkat dudes. Now I'm going to trim off those branches from the tree because, we don't want them hanging off the end of our card. So I'm going to trim those off. And I was pretty happy with the way that turned out. I'm going to use a little foam dimensional on the bird, just the little tiny one. You can use the one that came in the kit. I have so many that I just kind of put them somewhere until I run out because I have so many of the kits, right? Now here, I'm going to give you a tip. You could see in the picture that I put that fine tip glue on the eyeballs because I couldn't find my clear Jelly Roll pen. And I'm going to suggest skipping that. Like if you look back at the photo, it kind of made their eyes look funky. Like I literally had to go and get my Stampin' Write marker out and put little black dots in their eyes because they were just looking really, really weird. And I didn't notice it until I was photographing it. So I kind of had to go back and rephotograph. So I just used some foam strips there on the back of that sentiment. And then I colored the foam strips with the Early Espresso, and I'm just using the fine tip glue pen, and I'm getting all of those little sequins down there. I'm going to use the Tombow liquid glue to get the little clouds. And I was pretty pleased with the way that this turned out after my disaster of trying to create a scene that didn't work out. I see all these girls creating all these cute scenes with grass and clouds and water and skies, and I'm like so envious because I'm just not that talented. Not at all. So I'm going to put the insert in there and I'm pretty much done. Now, I did leave in a little bit of my cleanup because, I've seen that done before. I don't know if you guys are interested in seeing what I do when I'm done with my card, but I pull out my clipboard and I start writing on it. Every single card I make, I have a sheet for, and I just write everything on there. And then I have a list of all my social media uploads everywhere that I upload all my cards just so I can tick them all off. So, and then notes and stuff on the side to try to help keep me organized. So it's a work in progress, but nevertheless, that's kind of what I do after I'm done making a card. And then I read from that sheet when I'm doing this video. So thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I hope that this paper pumpkin alternative inspires you. If it does, then definitely link me to your card, upload it on my Facebook group, what have you. And until I see you again, take care and happy stamping.